My parents watched me accept a life-changing recognition at my college graduation from a resort hotel room, 300 miles away, while two people who weren't related to me by blood stood on that stage accepting a thank you gift meant for them. Let me back up. I'm Abigail. I was 22 when this happened. And I need you to understand something right from the start. I wasn't the dramatic kid. I wasn't the one who caused problems or demanded attention. I was the easy one. The independent one. The one my parents could forget about because I never made a fuss. My sister? Different story entirely. At every family dinner, every holiday, every single conversation, it always came back to her. Her job stress. Her relationship drama. Her plans. Her disappointments. Her everything. My parents would lean in when she talked, like they were afraid of missing something crucial. When I spoke, they'd nod politely, but their eyes would already be drifting, waiting for me to finish so they could get back to what actually mattered. I learned to stop talking. Growing up, I used to practice conversations in my head. I'd plan what to say at dinner, how to phrase things so maybe this time they'd really listen. I'd wait for the right moment, the perfect opening. And then I'd watch that opening close before I even got the first word out because my sister started talking about something else. After a while, I stopped rehearsing. Stopped waiting for my turn. I just existed in the background of their lives. By the time I got to college, I'd figured out the system. Pay my own tuition through scholarships and working 2 jobs. Cover my own bills. Handle my own problems. Meanwhile, my parents were helping my sister with her car payments, her rent, anything she needed. I remember once, my sophomore year, sitting in my apartment trying to decide between buying groceries or the textbook I needed for my literature class. I chose groceries. Then I spent 3 weeks sharing a textbook with a classmate, scheduling our study times around each other's work shifts. The one time I asked my parents for help with textbooks, just textbooks, my mom smiled at me and said, "You're so independent, Abigail. You'll figure it out." I never asked again. So when graduation approached, I already knew how it would go. But I called anyway. Some part of me needed to hear them say it directly. My mom didn't even pause. "We already have plans with your sister. She's going through a really stressful time right now, and we booked this resort trip months ago." My dad chimed in. "She needs us more. You understand, right?" Neither of them asked what graduating meant to me. Neither of them offered to try to make both work. They just expected me to understand. I hung up and sat on my bed, staring at that cap and gown hanging from my closet door. I felt that familiar sting in my chest, but underneath it was something new. Not sadness. Not even anger. Clarity. I realized I wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. I was done hoping they'd suddenly see me. And for the first time in my life, I started thinking about what it would look like to choose myself instead. Here's the thing about being overlooked your entire life, you stop expecting anything. You tell yourself it doesn't hurt anymore. But it does. You just get better at swallowing it. The signs had always been there. My parents missed my high school award ceremony because my sister had a work event. When I won a writing prize my sophomore year, my mom said she was proud, then immediately asked if I could help my sister move that weekend. Every milestone in my life was background noise to something louder. Something more urgent. Something that wasn't me. I worked part-time through all 4 years of college. Late nights at a coffee shop, early mornings cleaning office buildings. I learned how to stretch a paycheck, which bills could wait a few days, how to eat on $5 a day when I had to. My sister, meanwhile, talked casually about the payments my parents covered for her like it was just how things worked. When she'd tease me about my little writing projects, my parents would laugh along. Not mean. Just comfortable. Like they didn't see any reason to stop her. So no, I wasn't surprised when they chose a resort trip over my graduation. It hurt, but it was familiar. A few days after that phone call, I was at my best friend's house, helping her mom fold laundry. Just a normal afternoon. The kind of ordinary moment that ends up changing everything. Her dad walked through the kitchen and asked how graduation planning was going. I hesitated. Then I told them the truth. The room went quiet. Not awkward quiet. Heavy quiet. Her mom set down the towels she was folding. Her dad shook his head like he couldn't believe what he just heard. "That's not right," her mom said simply. "This is a big day." They didn't try to fix it. Didn't offer advice or tell me my parents probably had their reasons. They just listened. Then her mom looked at me with this smile that made my chest ache a little. "We'd love to be there if you want us." The words caught me completely off guard. I hadn't planned on saying yes. I hadn't planned on anything. But something shifted in that moment. I realized I'd been treating my parents' absence like a rule I had to obey, instead of a choice I could respond to. So I said yes. That night, sitting alone in my room, I thought about calling my parents to tell them. To explain. To soften it somehow. But then I realized something important. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for choosing people who actually showed up. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was deciding. And once that door opened in my mind, I couldn't close it again. What my family didn't know was that my life had been moving in a completely different direction for a long time. I'd been working quietly while I was in school, writing late at night after my shifts ended, revising scripts between classes, taking feedback from people who actually cared about my work, getting better, learning how to survive rejection without letting it destroy me. I never talked about it at home because nobody asked. And eventually, I learned not to volunteer information that would just be ignored. The screenplay I'd been developing started as a class project. Just something to fulfill a requirement. But it grew into something real. Something that mattered. I spent 2 years on it, rewriting scenes dozens of times, developing characters that felt true, building a story that said something important. A few weeks before graduation, my manager pulled me aside after a long meeting. We were standing in this hallway that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. He told me the project I'd been working on had moved forward in a way bigger than anyone expected. There would be public recognition. He asked if I'd be comfortable with that happening at graduation, in front of my school. I remember just blinking at him, totally caught off guard. Then I thought about those empty seats that were supposed to be reserved for my parents. "Yes," I said. "That's fine." I didn't tell my family. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because it genuinely didn't occur to me to share good news with people who'd never made space for it. I filled out the forms the school sent. In the section for family guests, I wrote down the names of the people who'd actually asked me how I was doing without being prompted. People who'd shown up when I needed them. As graduation day got closer, I expected to feel nervous. Instead, I felt grounded. Solid. When my mom texted me a photo of the resort view, palm trees, ocean, perfect blue sky, I stared at it for a second, then set my phone face down. That night, standing in front of my mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different. Because I felt different. Lighter. More real. I understood something then that I wish I'd figured out years earlier. Losing people who never really showed up isn't actually a loss. It's a release. Graduation day arrived without any drama. No last-minute calls. No sudden change of heart. The morning felt surreal. I got dressed slowly, taking my time with each step. The gown felt heavier than I expected. My cap sat crooked at first and I laughed quietly, fixing it in the mirror. I didn't see a girl waiting to be noticed anymore. I saw someone who'd finished something hard. Someone who'd done it alone and survived. When we got to the auditorium, it was chaos. Families everywhere, hugging, laughing, taking a million photos. Parents adjusting their kids' caps, straightening gowns, beaming with pride. I scanned the crowd out of habit, even though I already knew my parents wouldn't be there. Then I saw them. My best friend's parents, waving from the family section. Her mom already had tissues out. Her dad was grinning like this was his own kid graduating. Something warm settled in my chest. Not sadness. Not longing. Gratitude. We lined up backstage. The lights dimmed. Music swelled. Names got called, one by one. Students crossed the stage, shaking hands, accepting diplomas, moving their tassels from right to left. When it was my turn, I stepped forward, heart steady, hands relaxed. I shook the dean's hand, accepted my diploma, smiled into the applause. It was loud and genuine, and for the first time in my life, it felt like it was meant for me. I thought that would be the peak of the day. I was wrong. After the last name was called, the dean came back to the microphone. He paused, glanced toward the wings of the stage, then back at the audience. Before we conclude, he said, we have a special recognition from one of our industry partners. A ripple moved through the room. My pulse quickened, but I kept my face neutral. A woman stepped onto the stage. Confident. Polished. I recognized her immediately. She'd been part of my professional life for years, long before my family ever cared to ask what I was doing with my time. She took the microphone and spoke clearly. One of your fellow graduates has contributed to a project that exceeded every expectation we had. Her work became the foundation of a major production currently moving forward. The room went completely quiet. She said my name. I stood, legs slightly unsteady now, and walked back onto the stage. The lights were brighter up close, warm against my skin. I accepted the folder she handed me, fingers tightening just enough to remind myself to breathe. She talked about the project in careful detail. A significant budget. A long-term opportunity. A commitment that would change my life. She mentioned numbers that made people in the audience gasp. I didn't look for my parents. I didn't need to. Then she said it. We'd also like to acknowledge the parents who supported her throughout this journey. Time slowed. I heard murmurs ripple through the audience. She turned. Not toward the empty seats my parents would have occupied, but toward the section where my best friend's parents were sitting. Would you please join us on stage? For a split second, they didn't move. Her mom looked around, confused, hand hovering near her chest. Her dad leaned in, whispering something I couldn't hear. I met their eyes and nodded. They stood. The walk up that aisle felt longer than my own walk across the stage. The audience watched, curious and uncertain. You could feel the confusion in the room, people trying to understand what was happening. When they reached us, her mom was already crying. Not quiet tears. Open, overwhelming emotion, the kind that comes from being part of something you never expected. The woman handed them an envelope and a framed certificate. She explained it simply and directly. A recognition gift. A thank you for believing, for showing up, for being present. She stated the amount once. Clearly. No fanfare. The room erupted. Gasps. Applause. People standing. Her mom covered her mouth. Her dad wrapped an arm around her shoulders, eyes shining. I stood there, letting it happen. Letting the truth exist in the open. The cameras captured everything. The expressions. The confusion turning into understanding. The pride that had nothing to do with blood. 300 miles away, my parents were watching from that resort room. I know this because later, when I checked my phone, the proof was everywhere. But in that moment, I didn't think about them at all. I thought about every night I'd spent working alone. Every bill I'd paid myself. Every time I'd swallowed a story because nobody wanted to hear it. Every moment I'd felt invisible in my own family. And I felt something settle into place. This was what showing up actually looked like. When the ceremony ended, the crowd spilled outside into the afternoon sun. My best friend's parents hugged me tight, over and over, like letting go would make it disappear. We're so proud of you, her mom kept saying. We're so proud. I smiled, nodded, thanked people as they congratulated me, took photos, laughed, breathed. Then my phone started vibrating. At first, I ignored it. I didn't need to look to know who it was. But it kept going. Buzz after buzz after buzz. When I finally pulled it out, the screen was almost completely filled with notifications. Missed calls. Messages. More missed calls. 78 of them. My mom's name over and over. My dad's number. My sister, suddenly desperate to talk. The messages I could see on the lock screen were frantic. Abigail, call us. What is happening? We need to talk now. I didn't open a single one. I turned the phone face down and slid it back into my pocket. We went to dinner afterward. The four of us. A small Italian place not far from campus. Nothing fancy. Just warm food, clinking glasses, conversation that flowed naturally. Her dad insisted on making a toast. To Abigail, he said, raising his glass. Who taught us that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up. Her mom kept reaching across the table to squeeze my hand, like she needed to make sure I was real. At one point, my phone buzzed again. Her mom glanced at it gently. You don't have to answer that, she said. I know, I replied. And I meant it. The story spread faster than I expected. Clips from the ceremony showed up online. Local news picked it up. Then bigger outlets. People shared it, commented, argued about it, applauded it. Some called it cruel. Others called it justice. Comment sections filled with people sharing their own stories of being overlooked, of finding family in unexpected places. I didn't engage with any of it. My parents tried everything. They called mutual friends. Left messages with extended family. My aunt reached out, telling me my parents were devastated, that I'd embarrassed them publicly. My sister posted this public message about how proud she'd always been of me, how she'd always believed in me, how she was my biggest supporter. It didn't land the way she hoped. People remembered things. Screenshots resurfaced. Old social media posts where she'd mocked my writing. Old comments. Old jokes at my expense that suddenly didn't seem so funny anymore. The calls didn't stop. Neither did my silence. A few days later, my parents reached out through a third party, asking for a conversation. They said there'd been a misunderstanding. That they deserved to be recognized. That they were my parents, after all. That they'd raised me, fed me, clothed me. Didn't that count for something? I listened as the message was relayed to me. Then I thanked the person and went back to my work. Because here's the truth they didn't want to accept. They weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because they missed the moment. They were embarrassed. Their friends had seen. Their family had seen. The world had seen who they really were. And that door had already closed. In the days that followed, my life didn't explode. It settled. I went back to work. Meetings. Revisions. Long hours that felt different now. Not heavier. Cleaner. The kind of tired that comes from building something real. My best friend's parents checked in on me every morning. Not to ask for updates. Just to ask how I was feeling. Sometimes I didn't know how to answer, so I just said, okay. And that was enough. My parents kept trying. Through relatives. Through old family friends. They wanted to explain. To be seen. To reclaim something they thought was theirs. I never responded. Silence wasn't punishment. It was a boundary. Eventually, the calls slowed. The messages stopped. Life moved on the way it always does when you stop feeding the chaos. What surprised me most wasn't how calm I felt. It was how little guilt remained. I'd spent years believing that love meant endurance. That family meant tolerance. That you had to accept whatever people gave you because they were blood. Now I understood something simpler. Love shows up. Family stays. And once you learn that difference, you don't unlearn it. Today, when people ask me about my family, I don't hesitate anymore. I talk about the ones who showed up. The ones who sat in the front row. The ones who chose me without conditions. The ones who saw me when I felt invisible. Blood didn't make them my family. Presence did. If you've ever been overlooked by the people who were supposed to stand beside you, know this, you're not wrong for choosing yourself. You're not cold for closing a door that kept you small. Sometimes the people who see you clearly aren't the ones who've known you longest. Sometimes family is something you build, not something you're born into. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let the people who never showed up watch from a distance while you celebrate with the ones who did. Thanks for listening, and if this story hit home for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own experience, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your people, choosing yourself, and building the life you deserve. The people who matter don't mind, and the people who mind don't matter.